Paris, a Jewish community still in mourning after the terrorist attacks in Paris. At the heart of their grief, a fear that anti-Semitism is on the rise and that they're no longer safe in a country which has Europe's largest Jewish population. In a kosher shop across the street, this woman is worried.
In Europe,
there is something going on which makes us think that anti-Semitism is on the rise. And it's not just happening in France. I didn't think it would happen so quickly in France. It's true that since what happened to Ilan Halimi for me, I was traumatized, really traumatized. After that, there was the attack in Toulouse. My daughter's husband is from Toulouse, and if you go there, you'll see that there, all the young people don't want to stay there. No one wants to stay in Toulouse. Young people are scared there.
In 2006, Ilan Halimi was kidnapped and tortured to death because he was Jewish and thus thought to have money. And in 2012, a gunman killed 3 children and a parent at a Jewish school in Toulouse. And despite the beefed-up security measures after the Paris attack, a growing number are wondering whether it would be safer to move to Israel. This agency advises those wishing to emigrate to Israel. Last year, a record number of 7,000 French Jews emigrated. That's over twice the amount in 2013. The agency's director claims many leave for economic and family reasons, but he admits recent anti-Israeli protests and attacks in France also weigh on the decision to emigrate.
We can see, for example, that after these incidents, there is an increase in the number of those who register for our information meetings, and that's what's happened last summer. The incidents in Paris, the attacks on synagogues, the cries of death to Jews in Place de la République leave an impact. One can say these incidents are linked to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but that's just a pretext. There is hatred towards the Jews that has become almost public. Meaning that voicing this has become much more serious, and it creates a certain uneasiness or a malaise.
Olivia knows Israel well. She lived there for a year and has been there on holiday and for work. Olivia, who lives in Provence, is Jewish and her children attend a Jewish school. She says that over the past years, she and her husband had talked about moving to Israel or to the United States, but more for economic or business reasons. But there was no rush in making a decision. Yet the Paris attacks made her feel time was running out.
When something dramatic happens, I want to find a solution. If my children have a problem, I find a solution. If professionally there's something that doesn't work, I'll find a solution. So it's like that. I needed to find a solution. I can't control what happens at a government level, all the institutions, security measures and so on. So what can I do at my level? I have to find a solution. It would be easy if it were just a question of saying, come on, the solution is, okay, we're emigrating to Israel. But several days later, we're in our daily routine, and the answer isn't that simple. And anyway, that's not going to solve the problem. And on top of that, I'm French.
Proud to be French. It's a strong sentiment among France's 600,000-strong Jewish community, the biggest one after Israel and the United States. A community critics warn Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has his eyes on. But for others, this is normal given the current climate.
I think it's understandable that many Jewish people want to leave. The numbers are increasing and they will continue to increase because if you are parents, you have the choice of sending your children to public schools where they are insulted by the young immigrant generation or sending them to private schools where they will have to be protected by the army and the police. And it's not pleasant to live under this threat and having machine guns to protect you.
Pierre Stamboul heads the Jewish-French Union for Peace. He's a fervent believer that Israel's far-right politicians are to blame for rise in anti-Semitism and scaremongering among France's Jewish population.
There's a whole bunch of propagandists who say the Jews are in danger. We're on the eve of a new Kristallnacht. You're not safe here, so emigrate to Israel. First of all, if there is one country where the Jews are not safe, it's Israel. And that will be the case as long as the Palestinian people are denied their existence and are martyred. One can't say that today we're on the eve of a new Kristallnacht, that anti-Semitism in France is on the rise. No, in France, racism does exist. There are currents of racism everywhere in certain circles. For now, racism really hits the Arabs, the black population, the Roma. It also hits the Jewish community. This is extremely dangerous. We all have to fight this racism. The whole world, everyone together from all backgrounds.
Fighting against racism and especially exclusion has been Elie Bouzin's main goal for a long time. A survivor of Auschwitz, Elie Bouzin has been talking to students and going to Auschwitz with groups to explain the horrors of the Nazi death camps. On the 70th anniversary of the liberation of those camps, he says it's still important for France and Europe to remain vigilant, even if the context today is completely different.
For me, I think that the large majority of the French population is not anti-Semitic. It's open and democratic. Today, anti-Semitism comes from little groups which are very organised and well-structured. And it's these groups, if we can't find a solution to stop them, they will spread.
There's little doubt that France's March of Solidarity after the terrorist attacks sent emotional shivers down most of the world's spine. And for Elie Bouzin's daughter, the message of unity against all forms of racism and terrorism turned her soul into red, white and blue.
At the march, I brought a huge French flag. And all of a sudden, I had a kind of revelation. I told myself, this isn't possible. We can't leave them this beautiful country. It's impossible. My maternal grandparents came here from Poland before the war. My father came here from Poland to live in France. There was this uprising to support freedom of expression, and I was at the Place de la Bastille. And again I said to myself, I have never had such little desire to leave France. So for me, not only did the terrorist attacks fail to muzzle freedom of expression, since we saw the huge wave of international support that the killings of the journalists of Charlie Hebdo created, that the Jewish community is scared, that's a fact, but that their ties with France are strong, that I'm sure of.
Despite these strong ties, for many of France's Jewish community, the soul-searching continues. A search on how to be Jewish and French in a country still coming to terms with how the cracks in their unity led to such terror.